2024 meeting of the Citizen Review Board is now called to order. If you will, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I will now ask our meeting clerk, Ms. Tanya Wilcox, if you will, please conduct the roll call.
Akil.
Present.
Banks.
Present.
Collins. Cook.
Present.
Guy.
Present.
Ingandella.
Present.
March.
Present.
Tamayo.
Present.
Valdez.
Present.
Let the record show that all members of the Citizen Review Board are present with the exception of Dr. Collins. At this time, I'll ask our Vice Chair, Mr. Carlos Valdez, to read the meeting guideline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please silence all electronic devices. The duties and responsibilities of the Citizens Review Board are to review completed department investigations involving use of force in cases of importance and interest to the community or the city. Determine whether the disposition of review cases was consistent with department policies and procedures. Review matters of importance or interest and make recommendations regarding the handling of these matters. Determine whether any revisions or additions to the department policy and procedures are appropriate in reviewing matters of or importance or interest, and report findings and recommendations to the mayor and chief of police. Cases that are brought before the Citizens Review Board are closed internal affairs cases that have been investigated and brought to the police chief for disposition. It is the Citizens Review Board's job to review the cases and render an opinion as to whether the investigation was done according to the department policies and procedures. The Citizens Review Board members are provided the investigation or the investigative files in advance of the meeting. The Citizens Review Board will hear from the department whenever matters of interest or importance are required for review by the board or the department. The coordinator for the board is Captain Kevin Schoolmeesters. Any person who wishes to make a complaint concerning a matter which may be considered by the Professional Standards Bureau should see Captain Schoolmeesters for information on how to file a complaint. The board should not discuss matters where the city or the department may likely be a party in litigation.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and also thank you for filling in as acting chair last month during my absence. You ran a very well-structured meeting. As I reviewed the minutes and reviewed the video recording, I will only state for our new members that we do perform under Robert rules. So if you will, if our new members can familiarize themselves with Robert rules as we continue our monthly meetings. We will now continue with the agenda of item 4, approval of the minutes from the meeting of March 26, 2024. Are there any questions or provisions? Hearing none, I would need a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Board member Ms. Irene Guy has made a motion to approve the minutes of March 26, 2024 meeting. Board member Mr. Tamayo has seconded the motion of approval of the minutes of the March 26, 2024 meeting. Any further discussion? We'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed, please show by raise of hand. The motion passes. Thank you. We'll now continue with the agenda under item 5, public comment. Do we have any participants for the public comment portion of our agenda? Seeing none, we'll ask our meeting clerk, have we received any recorded comments for this meeting?
We received one call on the recorded line. I provided a transcript of the call to the board. We were unable to get it to playback, but you all have a transcript of it. It was from Ms. Zickery, and I'll let you read it, and I'll just file the transcript on behalf of the to be received with the clerks.
Thank you, Ms. Zickery, for your recorded message and participating in the public comment portion of this agenda. Is there any board members wish to make a comment or statement in reference to the public recording that we received this evening? Let the record show Dr. Collins is present.
Kill, I'd like to make a statement about the voicemail. So this voicemail was received on the 15th of, thank you very much, I always forget to do that. This email was received on 4/15. Yeah, this is something that I would have liked to see before we came to the meeting. So I don't know how we could change that at all, but I didn't even get a chance to read it.
This is a public comment portion. Normally people show up and give their comment.
Okay,
And so this is being treated just like the same as any other person showing up and giving public comment. We give it to you at the time that it was obtained.
okay.
I mean, like, we don't give it to you right then because we're not in front of the board at that point. So, I mean, it's,
Okay.
normally public comment comes in person. This was just
Okay, I see what you're saying.
this was something
now.
that was really started during COVID where we started a line. And
Okay.
we've just kept that line open as another option. And
Okay.
if I could, I would bring the recording here and plug it up, but in this situation, it was easier to bring the transcript rather than try to bring a recording
Okay.
that we get off our line. So, we transcribed it, gave it to you. Ms. Zickery, I know you haven't been here as long, but Ms. Zickery's been here before the board several times.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Smith.
And in this case, the chair assumed that you had gone to the Evelyn Wood speed reading course.
We're all a little familiar with this particular case. If you will, you can review the previous recordings and get adjusted to this particular case. And if you would like to make a statement or comment in the next month's meeting, please feel free to do so.
Okay.
We'll now continue with item 7, items to be reviewed. Tonight, we're reviewing case number 22F-001. Officer was deceptive, untruthful in the performance of his duties, and untruthful to his supervisor. The officer ignored a direct order not to discuss the open investigation. MOR 1107, truthfulness in department matters, sustained. MOR 1204, attendance to duty, sustained. MOR 1208, insubordination, sustained, and this officer was terminated. If we will, we can have a member of the Tampa Police Department to present this case. Please state your name, rank, and department for the record.
I'm Senior Detective Jason DeGagne, D-E-G-A-G-N-E. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This case involves Officer Mr. Corbino. On January 4th, 2022, Officer Corbino was dispatched to a disturbance at the Circle K on Kennedy Boulevard. Officer Corbino made contact with the subject in the bathroom and told the subject over 20 times that he needed to leave. This was on the authority of the manager of the Circle K. At no point did he attempt to identify the individual to complete a trespass warning. The subject eventually left, and Officer Corbino added call notes and stated that the subject walked across Kennedy and left before I could obtain his name for the trespass. On January 22nd of 2022, Officer Corbino was dispatched to a suspicious person call a total of 3 times. At 21:43 hours, dispatch voiced that they were holding a call for the first time. Sergeant Davis, along with another officer, came over the radio and advised that they would take the call. Officer Corbino came over the radio, canceled both of those units, and advised that he would respond. The investigation revealed that Officer Corbino never responded to that call. He placed himself on scene using his computer at 22:05 and cleared the call at 22:09 with no call notes. There is no body-worn camera footage of this response. During his interview, Officer Corbino stated that he did not respond to the call as indicated. At 22:14 hours, Officer Corbino was dispatched a second time to the same call. He arrived on scene at 22:16 hours and activated his body-worn camera at 22:18. Prior to BWC capturing audio, Officer Corbino asked dispatch for the subject's most recent location. The dispatcher provided that information along with the subject's physical description and clothing description. Within a minute, Officer Corbino advised radio that he believed that he had a visual of the suspect and gives the same description back to dispatch. The male appeared to be attempting to start a scooter. As Officer Corbino approached the male, he asked if he is okay. The male continued walking and replied yes. Officer Corbino then asked the male if he lived here, and the male replied no, as he continued to walk past Officer Corbino. Officer Corbino told the subject that he is good and made no attempts to detain or identify this individual. Officer Corbino advised dispatch that he was in contact with the subject, and the video shows that when he made that statement, he had already allowed the subject to walk by, and he was no longer in view of the body-worn camera. While on scene, two males advised Officer Corbino that the same subject had walked into their home. At the same time, a female showed Officer Corbino a video of the same subject on their porch, and he attempted to open their door. Officer Corbino does not relay any of this information to any other officers and advised the citizens to call back if the subject returned. He cleared the call at 22:39 hours. At 22:53 hours, Officer Corbino was dispatched a third time to that same location to assist a detective who had been called to the scene by one of the residents. I'm going to refer to this detective as Detective X because of his undercover capacity. At this point, Sergeant Davis came over the radio and requested a call from Officer Corbino. Sergeant Davis is Officer Corbino's supervisor, or was at the time. Officer Corbino told Sergeant Davis that the individual was not the suspect, as this individual was just trying to start a scooter. There is no BWC video or documentation or call notes that confirms that Officer Corbino made contact with anyone. At 23:17, Officer Corbino activated his body-worn camera with Detective X. Officer Corbino cleared the call at 23:40 and added the following notes. Checked the area and unable to locate the subject. The male on the scooter could be the same individual, however, his name was not given, nor was he detained, as none of his information was given prior to contact. No signs of burglary at any of the nearby apartments. At 22:27 hours, Officer Corbino was dispatched to assist another unit. This is in reference to another call. Was working a traffic post with three female juveniles who needed a ride home, and he acknowledged the call via the radio. He was approximately 1.6 miles away from that call, out on a crime prevention activity. At 02:29 hours, the unit sent Officer Corbino a MDT computer message providing her exact location. At 02:43 hours, Officer Corbino responded via the MDT computer that he knew nothing about it and that he asked if he was still needed. Officer Corbino then arrived on scene at 02:48 and transported the juveniles home. He deactivated his camera at 03:12 hours and cleared the call at 03:45. On January 31st of 2022, Officer Corbino was relieved of duty. He signed and acknowledged the administrative duty forms. Quote, "You are not to discuss this investigation with anyone except your union representatives," end quote. He was also advised by Major DeFelice that it stemmed from a burglary investigation that he responded to. So he figured out it was in reference to the call I talked to earlier. So Officer Corbino, on February 3rd of 2022, called Detective X on an information-seeking phone call. Officer Corbino stated to Detective X that he knew he was not supposed to discuss this case with anyone. However, he was going to discuss it with him anyway. And this conversation was also heard by Detective Campagnano and Detective McNiff, who was in the room with him. Disposition, the investigation revealed that Officer Corbino was deceptive, untruthful in the performance of his duties, and all those violations were sustained, and he was in turn terminated. Another note, he was also under another investigation during this investigation. So this formal investigation was opened on January 31st of 2022. At the same time, Officer Corbino was a subject officer in another formal investigation from 2021. During that investigation, Officer Corbino was found to be in violation of standard of conduct, truthfulness in departmental matters, insubordination, using of restricted use of departmental property, as well as attentiveness to duty. So these violations during this investigation, again, were sustained when it was discovered that Officer Corbino was utilizing departmental internal camera system for non-work related matters. Officer Corbino was dating another TPD officer at the time, and he was using the camera to monitor her actions. He was ordered to stop, but he attempted to access the system several times after he was restricted use. Additionally, Officer Corbino placed himself out at a training unit location when he was handling personal business at a different location. So again, the 5 violations sustained in that formal investigation combined with the 3 sustained in this investigation led to the termination of Officer Corbino on June 28, 2022. So Officer Corbino unsuccessfully appealed the department's decision to terminate him with the Civil Service Board. Additionally, we did contact the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Criminal Standards and Training Commission in an attempt to revoke his certification. However, we were unsuccessful, and they advised that they have elected to take no further action in reference to his certification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As chair, I selected this particular case to show that here in the city of Tampa, we hold our officers to a higher standard. And we have a check and balance system. And that check and balance system starts with our mayor, to the chief, and to the staff, including internal affairs, which supports department accountability, and as seen tonight, also supports transparency. We have had meetings in the past where we as board members created discussion in reference to final disposition, in reference to letter of counseling. So I wanted to select this particular case to reflect that termination is also an option. And after thorough investigation, our department will utilize disciplinary actions as need be. And we don't want to show that one bad apple is a reflection of our entire department. So if you will, we'll open the floor for any comments, questions, and concerns. If you will, Mr. Cook.
Hi, Detective. My concern is the previous 5 violations. Those are serious violations, and this is the second or third time since I've been on the board, and which has been a short time, where someone has made a violation like this and there is no follow-up. So if he had 5 violations, is there a record of any kind of follow-up with his supervisors?
Well, these investigations were running at the same time.
Okay, because I thought you said one was before the other one.
They were basically, we were working them together. I was working one of them personally. Another detective was working different violations kind of at the same time.
Okay.
So the dispositions were were really close together.
So it's a total of 8 rather than 5
Absolutely,
and 3.
yes. Yeah, but they were separate cases, and they happened at separate times.
Okay, I have one other question is, there's some terminology, and I notice this as well when I do the oral board interviews. You use police language, and as a citizen, I really don't understand some of it. So I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So what's a Signal 80?
It is a field interview.
Okay. And what's a Signal 14?
information. Information
Okay.
basically can cover anything.
Okay, what's a CAD, C-A-D?
CAD is the system that we utilize, that dispatch utilizes. What does CAD stand for?
Hey, I
Sorry
don't know,
about
I
that.
just wanna know. I wanna
No, that's all
learn
right.
stuff.
Computer aid dispatch.
Okay, okay, and, signal 51?
51 means you're on the way.
Okay. Also, what is the, body worn camera policy? I mean, when is that camera activated?
The camera is activated once you're on scene.
Okay, there's a 30-second lag, right? Is that just with audio? or
It's
is
just,
that
it's just
also
with audio,
video?
yeah, it's
Okay.
with audio. So once you press the button, it catches the 30 seconds prior. However, there's no audio.
Okay, so they're pressing a button, so the police officer is activating the camera?
Yes. It's either activated, we have different activation. It can be activated when you pull your gun, when you pull your taser. Those are the
Okay.
signal activations, and then it's activated as well when you can press it manually, or you turn on your overhead lights in your vehicle.
Okay, one last thing, is there was, I think it's Lieutenant, hold on, let me put on my glasses, I'm glad I brought them. Parsis, she made a comment in the, as I was reading through the case, that there were several complaints she had addressed from other supervisors related to Corbino. Do you remember reading that?
I don't.
I read that in the case file.
Okay.
So if this person had, was hearing from other leaders in the Tampa Police Department, I don't know, it didn't say exactly when this occurred. Well, wouldn't it have triggered some other things, other disciplinary action? I mean, shouldn't she have at least checked into what was going on with these complaints from the other supervisors?
Was there anything specific that she mentioned as far as violations? Because there has to be a violation for us to actually conduct
Okay.
a formal investigation.
Well, she made that comment during obviously an interview in the process of this case. And it was just strange to me again, as here we have someone who is being identified by other supervisors that he's a problem. And there's no investigation going on from that perspective. So, I mean, she made that comment afterwards. So the things that this guy was doing were happening before the events that we're talking about in this case.
Do you want to address that?
Hi, Corporal Danasis with
Hi,
Internal
Corporal.
Affairs. I can address that. That was what prompted Lieutenant Parashis to open up the first investigation. So it was 21F016. She was receiving complaints from another sergeant that he was hanging around the district for extended periods of time, not responding to calls in a timely manner, things like that. And his girlfriend was working at the office at the time. So that's what prompted her to start paying attention. And that's actually what, how we discovered he was using the cameras to monitor her action, the girlfriend's actions. So she started looking into it, and that's how the investigations opened.
Okay, well, as I was reading through the case, because I read it through a couple times, I didn't hear any of those details that you're telling me right now.
Maybe
I didn't see those.
Did I forget to send her interview? I'm sorry, yes, her interview was part of 21F016. So that was the first case that Detective DeGagny was working. Mine was 22F001.
Okay.
So maybe her interview was in that,
Okay,
and they combined it during the disposition.
okay,
But that's the kind of complaint she was getting from other sergeants. They would send him to help other squads when their squads were short, and a sergeant actually approached her and said, we'll just go without one because he's so terrible, he's not
Yeah.
responding. So she started looking into that.
well, look, there's bad everything. There's bad
Right.
teachers, there's bad lawyers, well, no offense, guys, but there's bad
Sure,
everything.
sure.
But, you know, there's bad police officers as well. Well, thank you for your
Yes.
information.
Yep.
Those signal things, man, thank you for your information, I appreciate you.
It's all right. Thank you.
And just as a note, we have had several presentations on the BWCs, in reference to their functions, accessibility, stats, and things of that nature. But if it's the request of the board for our new members, if we need to review some of those presentations, if that's something of your interest, please share with the board, and we'll ensure that we have another presentation to bring everyone up to speed on where the rest of the board members are in reference to the BWCs.
I would definitely like that. I can say that right now, you know. Yeah, I definitely would like that, because I'm reading through this case and That 30-second delay, I was like, well, I mean, a lot of things can happen in 30 seconds, and it could change the perspective on what we're listening to and what we're seeing. You agree?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and typically we will have a BWC presentation annually. So
Okay.
maybe we can, we'll speak with Mike Smith or Ms. Kamaria and see if we can get that scheduled within
Awesome.
the next meetings to come.
Okay.
And
I
just to
appreciate you.
clarify, Mr. Cook, so that 30 seconds, so when the officer presses the button or when the signal goes off, that 30 seconds prior to them pushing, the activation is captured, 30 seconds prior to them pushing it.
Okay, and then
Yeah,
30
it's
seconds
just no
after,
audio.
there's no audio.
It's just no audio yet, but the whole picture, the visual is captured.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
You will, Mr. Tamayo.
Detective, I just have a couple more questions on the line of Mr. Cook's. T25 is in contact with?
Yeah, 10, yeah, it's T that stands for 10. It's the way they
Okay.
write the code,
So
and it's
1025.
1025, yeah, it's in contact.
With the
With the
subject.
subject, yes.
Okay, and then a 10-4 is just,
Just
I'm just
affirmative,
okaying
yeah,
affirmative?
I'm okay,
Okay, got
yeah.
it. And an MDT?
MDT as mobile data terminals, the computer system that we have in our cars.
Okay.
You can use those to notify dispatch that
Got
you're
it.
on the call. You can communicate with other officers on there. You can communicate with dispatch.
What's the MDT? What is that?
Mobile data terminal.
Mobile data.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And if you will, the chair is open. There seems to be a lot of verbiage and a lot of concern in reference to the various codes and department vocabulary and terminology. So the chair is open to a motion if there needs to be a presentation or even for board members to receive documentation on the various codes to ensure that once we review these cases, we're all on the same page and able to define such terminology when reviewing the case. I think that information will be helpful.
Just quick reference guide, something like that would be fine.
Chair is open to a motion.
Yeah, I motion that we have some detailed information about signals and codes and things like that.
Mr. Cook has made a motion on the floor in reference to the board receiving quick reference guide, documentation in reference to various codes and terminology to ensure when reviewing the case, we can define it within its full content. Do we have a second?
Second?
Mr. Tamayo has seconded the motion. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? We'll continue with the vote. All those in favor? That motion passes. Thank you.
Detective, how long had Officer Corbino been with TPD at the time?
He was on 7 years.
7 years at the time this happened?
Wow.
And other than the violations stemming from 2021, which occurred, say, within 5-6 months of these violations in early January of '22, any prior history before that?
He had in 2017, he had a violation of the assigned vehicle program. He installed some lights and like sirens in an unmarked vehicle without permission. In May of 2020, he had another standard of conduct violation where he was suspended without pay.
Now that, okay, well, so suspended without pay, so that sounds like a pretty serious
It
violation.
was, I don't have all of the details of that, but I know it was, again, it was a standard of conduct, and my notes say Officer Corbino was suspended without pay after he entered another officer's assigned vehicle while it was parked at a toll plaza and did not disclose that information when confronted. It was suspected, so Officer Corbino said that he wanted to look at the officer's vehicle to see how he had set up the interior, because he was going to try to copy the way that he had set up his vehicle.
Okay, but suspended without pay?
Yes.
And so I noticed that at the time the formal investigation was open with a Corporal Thanasis, that he was relieved of duty on that day.
That's correct. So he was relieved, if I remember correctly, after we had interviewed him in reference to the one case.
Okay, so
Is that right? No, he was noticed. Yes.
if he had already been suspended without pay for an event back in 2020, and then you had these 5 very serious alleged violations happening in 2021, why wouldn't he have been relieved of duty at that time?
I'm sorry.
So he's already had one major violation. He's been suspended without pay. He then has 5 additional violations that are really quite serious. Then I noticed that he's got these actions at the beginning of January of 2022. And on the day that this investigation for these actions is opened with Corporal Thanasis, he's relieved of duty. Why wouldn't that have occurred earlier with already a serious offense having occurred?
Hi, Corporal Thanasis again. The first case, the 21F016, were
Yes.
the allegations that involved him monitoring his then girlfriend's actions on the camera. He was already working on the desk for an unrelated issue, not related to discipline, so he was already at the desk. But he was officially placed on administrative duty when my case was open.
Okay, and then relieved of duty means that he's basically on desk.
Yes, your vehicle, your firearm, your badge, everything is taken. You can't take any police action whatsoever.
So then we assume too that between January 31 of 2022, when he was relieved of duty, and the date, June 28th of 2022, when he was terminated, he was on desk duty, he was
Yes.
paid, but he couldn't,
Yes, he never got his equipment back.
couldn't get out there.
Yes.
Okay. Now, one of these violations is attentiveness of duty, or to duty. Is there something similar dealing with dereliction of duty, or are those two one and the same?
They're basically used the same.
So is there
Because
a
there's
separate
different bullet
violation for
points.
dereliction of duty?
There's separate bullet points in attentiveness to duty, and it's not paying attention to your duty. There's just, there's one that's, I don't have it in front of me, but the specific bullet point is like sleeping or reading on duty. And then there's attentiveness to duty for not writing required reports. So it's all under that category, but there are separate bullets that we use.
But it's one and the same? Okay, thank you.
If you will, Mr. Ingadella.
I wanted to say, first of all, thank you for referring this candidate to have his certification revoked. I'm curious as to, did they give you a reason why they wouldn't revoke it after you've sent them this big list of items?
And no, they never do. They just say no further action is taken, and they don't give us any reasons.
Do you happen to know, and it's okay if you don't, if Officer Corbino is currently employed in law enforcement in some other capacity?
To my knowledge, he is not.
Okay. Thank you.
Would TPD be given knowledge that he's being sought after or being considered?
Yes, they would notify us,
That would be standard
and
operating.
they'd want his jacket. Yes.
Very good.
If you will, Dr. Collins.
My question have all been answered, thank you guys, with one exception. He's been with TPD for 7 years. Was he with another force prior to TPD?
I don't have knowledge of that, ma'am.
That would be good to know with a person like this, because I was looking at his notice of disciplinary action, and what bothered me the most about it was the reason for it was incompetence and insubordination.
The incompetence covers a multitude. Once you have, was it three or more, 4 more sustained violations, we add incompetence to it. Hence, him being terminated.
But let me ask you this question. Was that incompetence and insubordination the one that was dated back and associated with MOR 1005, Standards of Conduct, which was in 2020? Because I had a similar question like you had. And I didn't know who it was, but I remember when somebody was saying how difficult and hard it was to work with him, and they just been trying and they gave up. I couldn't remember the name, but I remember reading that. So I was just trying to find out if this, when it said prior history and then it said current, And I'm current is kind of way back in 2021 and then 24, that's why I too was concerned about the period of time. And this disciplinary action was signed in 2022. But that bothered me to see incompetent in 2022 and he was still on the force in 2024.
He was terminated from the force in 2022.
It was 2022 here, 6/8/2022 when he was terminated. We just getting the case, okay,
Yes.
that's good. That's good, but I was just wondering if that 2020, if that's what that was, insubordination.
If the 2020 was insubordination,
Oh, no. Under 2022 with the date that this was prepared, it's just for me, I can't understand when I see the current and the prior history. I was just trying to find out with the incompetence and insubordination, was that with the 2020? Was it with the 2022? Which was about a month before its termination. That's all. If it's not clear, that's all I was, because it's, and I
it was,
have to remember.
it was
that we
22,
pulled
yes,
cases.
ma'am. That, they added that with the 2022 case.
Okay.
I have one more comment.
Okay, just one moment. Mr. Valdez?
Sure, so can you talk to me a little about between January 31st, that he was relieved from duty, till the 28th of June, that he was officially given this disciplinary action termination, what took place between the investigation? You need to go into detail. But my main concern is that we are having somebody still working for TPD, somebody that we know that has issues with attentiveness to duty, insubordination, as well as truthfulness. Why didn't we suspend him unpaid as we did in the past and expedite the investigation so that we do not need to spend tax dollar payers and paying him while duty for all these months that he was under this investigation?
Well, everything is done within 180 days.
I understand the 180-day rule, but when something of this severity that we know there's so many red flags, why don't we just expedite the process and just say, oh, I have 180 days, let's just wait, and we don't need to make this our priority? So I guess my frustration is with so many red flags that this individual imposed, we took a while to conclude the investigation, but we yet also kept him employed, whether he was with a badge, with a gun, with a car, with whatever, he was still employed by TPD, correct?
Correct, and Corporal Dennis says again, we can't just administer discipline, suspend without pay prior to concluding an investigation. That's against the Officer's Bill of Rights. We wouldn't do that as a department. We have to sustain violations. We can't just say, you're suspended without pay. We can't do that. I worked this case. I can tell you there was no lag time. I conducted the investigation as quickly as possible. There's so many records we have to get, interviews we have to do. We have to send the interviews out to be transcribed, wait for them to return, cover every base we can think of. And I can say with this case, we knew he already had an open investigation. We can probably think of what the likely outcome is going to be, and we also need it to be a rock-solid case for when it does go to arbitration, as he did go to civil service and appeal the department's decision to get his job back. Also, what you don't see in the file is he elected to have a complaint review board, which officers are allowed to do when they're facing certain discipline. That is where the officer chooses to, sworn law enforcement officers, the department chooses to, and then there's a fifth neutral party. So they get together and review the entire case file, and the five of them decide if they agree with the department sustaining those violations or not. So he chose to do that, and then officers hope, I guess if it was me, what my hope would be is that they disagreed with the department and would give the chief something to think about prior to administering my discipline. So Officer Corbino did elect to do that. That took time to schedule the review board, for them to get their findings to the chief, for him to make his determination. So it's not something that we can just say, you know, you're suspended without pay. It would be violating a lot of things.
And what duties was he doing while?
Sitting at the desk. He has no gun, he has no badge, he has no police car, he sat at the desk. I think he may have taken some time off using his annual time or personal time. I'm not 100% on that, but he does no police action whatsoever.
Does he has any access and not just him, but any candidate that would be under this circumstance, would they have any access to any of the police data,
He did
information,
not.
camera, or anything of that issue?
I can tell you he did not, because that first case was open and we had concerns about him using the internal systems to monitor his girlfriend. Obviously, that's very concerning. So I know him personally, all of his access was restricted. I believe we were doing all of his notices through the union and things like that, notifying him of interviews because he didn't have email. He could get in the building and leave the building. That was it. Depending on what the officer is alleged to have done, if it's something that we would consider a minor violation, we won't restrict their access. If they're not suspected of doing anything, we wouldn't do that ahead of time unless we had some kind of reason to do it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep, sure.
And again, just touch on that, these cases, especially when we get them and we know that they're looking at termination, they have to be airtight, because we're the ones that have to go in front of the arbitrator and explain ourselves. So our investigations have to be extremely thorough and had to be done correctly, and we have a lot of rules that we need to follow. So, and again, yeah, we have that 180 days, but we need that 180 days, because again, we have to do a thorough investigation. These are people's careers here that we're talking about. So.
If you will, Mr. Cook.
Just one more question. I'm still stunned that this gentleman was suspended, right? You said he was suspended without pay?
He was suspended, yes.
Without pay. So what happened? He just comes back on board after the suspension and you guys shake his hand and he gets back out on the field? There's no follow-up? There's no training?
It is a form of discipline, the suspension is, and we practice progressive discipline at the police department. Of course, it starts kind of at the bottom with the letter of counseling, the oral admonishments, and then builds way up to suspensions, then demotions, and then ultimately terminations.
So he received, and I'm sorry, so he received those previous disciplines, those letters and all those things before he was suspended?
Well,
Well, you said it
for
built-
that particular violation, again, the chief of police decided that what we mentioned earlier, I think that was 2020, that it was serious enough for a suspension. And again, I don't know the details of all that case.
But detective, you don't think that a man gets suspended for, obviously he gets suspended from the police force, it's a serious issue. Why is there no follow-up with his superior officers to find out what the heck is going on with this guy? And not only that, if there are other violations that have been built up like this, why isn't there some kind of psychological analysis? Something going on where you can take it to the next step and understand what this gentleman is doing in the field. This guy was jumping from balcony to balcony, pulling on a door. Somebody could have pulled the gun and shot him right then and there, and this police officer was neglecting his job. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
right?
found
He was
him to
jumping
be,
around.
yes, and that's why he was terminated, correct.
Okay, but the reason I'm saying is before this happened, he had been suspended, and I didn't read that. You just gave me that information. So that's why I'm asking, why isn't there not face-to-face follow-up with this guy? Letters of counseling, I don't know, I mean, obviously that's not doing anything. So there should be a procedure to follow up with this gentleman down the line, whether it's his corporal or sergeant or whatever, ride-alongs with him. Because when I was in corporate America, that's what they did. If you got suspended, first of all, you're not coming back. But if you're disciplined, you would have to have follow-up with whoever your direct report was. Why aren't we doing that in this,
We have
police department?
EAP program, the early intervention program, so in cases that you mentioned, where I think we've discussed this, our EAP program, so we do have measures in effect to help officers if there's any type of issues. Again, his suspension, he did his suspension and he was allowed to come back to work.
Just like that, no, nothing. He just shook his hand and gave him back the keys and his gun and his badge and put him back in a car on the street.
After the discipline was served, yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Only one, but I can't ask.
Thank you, Detective.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The chair is now open to a motion on whether we concur or not concur or even unable to reach determination regarding the disposition of the case and its findings.
Mr. Chair, I move that we concur with the sustaining of all three violations of Manual of Regulations, truthfulness in department matters, attentiveness to duty, and insubordination.
Mr. Chair, I second.
Board Member Lincoln Tamayo has made a motion in reference to sustaining all MRR violations. Dr. Collins has seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, we will continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed, please show by raise of hand. That motion passes. Thank you. We'll now continue with the agenda under item 8, Community and Tampa Police Department matters.
Mr. Chair, you need to move to the next.
Oh, yes.
Chair, there were none under the Tampa Police Department matters, but I am here on item number 9, CRB staff reports and business for the annual report.
Yes, continue with the agenda under item 9, CRB staff reports and business, in reference to the annual report. I was able to review the minutes and also review the recording of the last month's meeting. There were some added commentary in reference to the commentary page that's added to the annual report. Those items have been added. Are we prepared to adopt the annual report as it stands?
Mr. Chair, and I think you did it, but all of the areas that we cited last month.
It's in section 7.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was hoping not to talk. All of the areas that have been cited and discussed have been included into it. Because it was one that I just didn't remember saying it that way. But I'll go with it. Okay.
I believe that commentary was added into section 7 of the annual report.
Okay. Something about the mayor and the police chief.
It's, the amended sections were on page 2 under section 1. There was some language added there, which is, this has been done in track changes, so you will see the exact changes that were made being underlined. Dr. Collins, I think you had made the motion to go back into section 18.8 of the code, specifically with regards to the interview panel, and use a language straight from the code. So I did change that section up at your motion. And so on page 2, under section 1, it reflects the changes to specifically state the language from the code. So the sentence now reads in the second paragraph, which is about the fourth sentence from the bottom, and you'll see the underlying. It now reads, the CRB participates in TPD's interview panel of prospective officers and may at any time review and make recommendations regarding the department's hiring criteria. So that was based on your motion, Dr. Collins, and the other changes to the report were the motions to add some language under section 7, which is page 9. There were motions for these sentences to be added, so you'll see 2 paragraphs that were added under section 7, which incorporate the language from the motion made by the board.
And Mr. Smith, just one slight mathematical correction, that should read 136 applicants.
There does seem to be a number discrepancy there, so let me check and see.
Or maybe
Let me see
134,
which one
but
it
then the
is.
subsets need to be corrected.
Yeah, I have an email on it, so let me see where my typo was. Probably a scrivener's error by me. So thank you for catching that. I'll look real fast.
Mr. Meyer, what discrepancy was that? What page, what
On
section?
page 9, the first sentence on the interviewing of 134 applicants, including 88 certified law enforcement officers and 48 scholarship TPD Police Academy applicants.
Mr. Smith?
Apologize, I was looking at the email and I actually got the numbers correct from the email. So I'm gonna have to follow up with the person tomorrow and figure out where the scrivener, where their error was. Because I agree with you that one of the numbers is off by 2. So I'm not sure which one it is, but I will make the appropriate adjustment.
So as the educator came out of me.
Good catch.
Board members, are there any other concerns or questions or adjustments need to be made to this annual report?
Before we say yes, let me just.
Give you all a few more minutes. Obviously, this item will be continued to next month's agenda before we can adopt.
Okay, let's do it. You can,
If you will, Ms. Guy.
Couldn't we approve it with the corrections to come later, since it's just a number? I mean, it's been hanging around a long time, it might be really good for us to move it.
how long does it have to, when does it go to the
one
city
moment.
after we approve it? I'm sorry.
If you will, please continue. Ms.
Yeah,
Guy.
I was just saying that, just changing the number, if we could approve it with the caveat that that number will be changed on the document that goes forward to the City Council.
If you will, Ms. Kamaria Pettis. Michael?
Kamaria Pettis-Malco from the legal department. Yes, the board can adopt or approve the annual report as presented with the modification from Mr. Schmidt once that's done, but you could certainly approve it tonight. According to the ordinance for this board, it has to be presented to City Council within 60 days of adoption by the board. My suggestion is to use the date of June 6th in order to present the annual report to City Council.
If you will, Dr. Collins.
Yeah, and so that would give us the May meeting to still look. Trying not to talk tonight. That'll give us the May meeting to still take a look at this, even if we adopt it tonight? Or would it be fully adopted and we can't make any changes? I'm agreeing with the.
So if the board's motion is to adopt the annual report with the modifications that was presented to the board this evening, there's no need to review it because it'll already be adopted.
With the correction on the number, and I still have on page 9, number 2, to make sure that that is right. And I was looking at it in the minutes. And if those two things are correct, and we make a motion for page 9 being corrected, then we're okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I'm.
Dr. Collins, what's your concern with section 7, item 2, page 9?
If we look at that at number 2, are we saying that we want to have 4 community meetings, and then when we were doing the 3 districts with TPD, we're adding 3? So are we saying 7 meetings? Because that's not what the intent was. That's all I'm just trying to be sure, because it reads in here that we would have the city council single member district, and it recommended the city council further modify its ordinance to include the CRB in community meetings with TPD. And I thought we were trying to do not both.
Right, so my interpretation of that line item is it removes us doing the meetings out in the community, and it invites TPD for us to be able to be at the table when they have their meetings, but it's not specific as to how many meetings or the format of the meeting is just real vague, that for TPD to include us in their community meetings. But it doesn't mean that we're going to do 4 meetings with TPD.
No, not with TPD, 4 by ourselves, and then the
No.
TPD. Okay,
If
yeah.
you will, Ms. Guy.
Ms. Collins, what it's saying is that are removing those 4 from being in the field, okay, like we talked about?
I feel like we need to talk to them
You see?
about what's about coming.
Remove its requirement referring to holding CRB meetings in each of the 4 city council districts, so that's the 4
So
meetings.
will those city council meetings be covered? And will they need to be recorded? Or we're not having meetings, so we're pulling 3 meetings out? That's all I'm trying to figure out.
Well, and if I can.
If you will, Ms. Guy, please.
We will still have our meeting here, but we will not be doing it in the field. And that was, our concern was the field was.
So we're gonna still do that?
Yes, yeah, we'll still have our monthly meeting.
Okay.
But it won't be in the
In the
field.
field.
In the field.
But we
I'm
will
fine.
be invited to the police department's meetings when they have their meetings in the field. That's the way I understand it.
That is correct.
Is that the way this number 2
That's the way I
reads?
understood this
Okay.
motion, and
I just want, sure. I'm good. Make your motion.
Do all board members have clarity of page 9, section 7, item 2?
And it-
So can I make a motion to
Chair,
adopt?
chair is open to a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the annual report with the modification on page 9, number 1 of the numbers, because the numbers don't add up.
Do we have a second? Irene Guy has made a motion to adopt the annual report with the modification on page 9 in reference to the number of cases. Mr. March has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will continue with the vote. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed? That motion passes. The annual report is now adopted, and we can prepare for presentation on June 6th. And again, at that presentation, I believe, last year, presentation, we welcome, any members that want to be present, during that presentation and wish to, address the board, will have that opportunity as well. Even though we place comments and commentary into the annual report, I still will open that opportunity for board members, to show support or add whatever commentary that you wish, with city council. I applaud and support and encourage all board members to be present June 6th during that presentation. That will conclude item 9 of the agenda. We'll now continue with item 10, items to be continued. Under number 1, independent legal advisor. I know that we have placed this particular item on hold in reference to the process of interviewing or having applicants to appear in front of the board in reference to finding out the conclusion or the ending results of the bills that were being passed. Now that those items have been signed off, we can pick up in reference to the process of selecting independent legal advisor. if you will.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the Legal Department. If I may, at the last CRB meeting, the city did not have an analysis regarding the bill because it was not signed. Now that it's signed, the city does have an opinion regarding the bill. So if you want, I could provide that quick presentation to the board regarding the legislation, if that's the desire of the board.
Please,
Yes, please.
So what I've handed out to all the members is the House of Representatives, the final analysis regarding the bill. It's a detailed analysis. I believe your copy is maybe front and back regarding the legislation. So during the legislative session, it was clear that the legislatures wanted a uniform approach to review investigations of misconduct of law enforcement throughout the state, and that's what this legislation is about. House Bill 601 amends the current Florida Statute 112533, which is called the Florida Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. There are two provisions of the bill that were discussed at the last meeting. The first element talks about the receipt or processing or investigation of complaints. But the second provision is regarding the civilian oversight boards or the agencies that review it. So it says the civilian oversight of law enforcement agencies' investigations of complaints of misconduct by law enforcement officers or correctional officers. And this legislation stated that based upon the legislation, the city would be, according to these provisions of the House bill, the city would be precluded from enforcing Ordinance 2021-80. This ordinance expressly supersedes the executive order that originally created this board, and it would be precluded, the city would be precluded from enforcing or implementing Ordinance 2021-80 effective July 1. And that is 2021-80 is the ordinance in which this board operates. Now, there was a lot of discussion, if I may just continue going through the PowerPoint. There was a lot of discussion at the last meeting of what does a civilian oversight board, what does oversight mean? During the legislative session, there were a lot of things that were reviewed and discussed at session. The city watched the legislative session, the discussion from both the House and the Senate regarding this matter. It's clear that the legislatures reviewed James Wright's article on improving police-community relations, the role of civilian oversight agencies in Florida. There was also an analysis, and all of this is contained in the summary of the legislative session that I provided you a copy with. There was also discussion of the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. And I believe our chair went to one of the annual meetings regarding, that was provided from the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. The city also reviewed the legislative summary that I provided you, and also the proposed language that will be in the amended statute for the Police Officers Bill of Rights and the creation of the new statute. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But at the last CRB meeting, there was a discussion of, or an explanation of what oversight meant according to a Nevada case law. So that case law was addressing specifically an Indian Gaming Commission's authority on reviewing their gaming commission, which is separate and does not involve a civilian oversight agency that reviews law enforcement investigations. So those are different matters, different subjects in its entirety. But based upon the previous sources that I referenced to you and the previous sites, it's clear that the legislature had a clear understanding of what oversight meant, based upon those resources that I provided to you. And also on that slide, in the analysis or in the article from James Wright's article on improving police community relations, the role of civilian oversight agencies, I could provide a copy of that to you, but the city of Tampa specifically called out in that legislation, but also the city of Tampa is called out in the legislative summary as a part of or considered to be an oversight board. So this slide says that House Bill 601 amends Florida Statute 166, but it actually creates a new statute. It's going to create 166.0486 that allows a municipal law enforcement agency to create their own civilian oversight board according to the provisions that are allowed from this legislative session. So what's clear, and I want to, all the board members, I would hope to understand, it's clear the frustration from the board. It's clear the concern and the disappointment from the legislative session that this bill was actually signed by the governor. That is clear. There are questions that the board rightfully has about what's next. This is going to be discussed at the June 6th City Council meeting. I would encourage anyone and everyone who wants to appear to discuss this legislative matter to City Council to appear on the June 6th, 2024 City Council meeting. But this is a legislative matter, and I could hear what your frustrations are. I understood it at the last meeting, but to any questions or frustrations or concerns can't be addressed here because ultimately it's up to City Council regarding the finality of this, because the City Council is the legislative body of the city, and your purview is reviewing matters of police misconduct, matters of great importance, etc. So there's no action that I could take or a motion that you can make to resolve whatever this legislation is. That is a matter that will be addressed on June 6th with City Council. But this last slide says, as a result of this legislation, the Chief Brokaw will be moving forward with creating a new civilian oversight board as outlined or allowed accordance to this legislation. I'm sure later on, I don't know when, maybe Mr. Schmidt can provide some information later on down the road when that board will be created, but that will be coming as a result of this legislation. And that's all that I had regarding the presentation. But I would encourage all the members to review the House bill analysis. It's very detailed. And there are the additional sources that I referenced. They are quoted in the legislative summary. So I'd welcome you to also review those. But again, we will be discussing this. The city will be discussing this with City Council on June 6th at that agenda.
If you will, Ms. Irene Guy.
First of all, thanks so much for doing this so quickly. I'm surprised because I had a motion already to do exactly what you're asking, but you had it already, and thank you so much for that. It is a difficult thing, and we all should show up at the June meeting and hear what the City Council has to say. But thank you, I sincerely thank you so much for moving so quickly, because it certainly, the longer it laid there, the more questions that were gonna be asked. So thanks again for how quick you did it.
You with Mr. Cook?
I have a quick question. So, maybe I'm not seeing what's going on here, but is the Civilian Oversight Board, is that replacing the CRB?
That would be replacing the CRB.
Okay, so they are replacing the CRB
Well-
with this.
This legislation eliminates the Citizen Review Board according to this legislation. As a result of this legislation, the city is creating, the chief of police is creating his own citizen board according to the legislation and the new statute that allows him to do that.
Okay.
And this board that he will create is different from the, I believe it was the, I could put a note. It's different from the community impact team. I think that you referenced that at the last meeting. The impact team that's already in existence is not a board at all. It's just a group of individuals who are able to meet with the chief just to talk to him about anything and everything that's going around in the community. If the chief feels as though that this is something that should be addressed, what the chief has to do according to this team, the creation of this team, is to refer it to the Citizen Review Board. And it's for you to take action after it's referred to you, whether it's making a recommendation or asking for some reports in regarding to law enforcement misconduct, etc. But whatever he creates is going to be different from, as you brought up previously, the community impact team. Those are two different things, and it's not even a board. They're not bound by the sunshine provision. It's just a group of individuals who meet with the chief.
Okay. I'm still not clear. This board right here replaces the Civilian Oversight Board, replaces the Citizens Review Board? Does it replace it? This will be defunct.
That is as a result of the legislation.
Okay, this will not exist anymore, the CRB.
After July 1st, correct.
That is the city's interpretation, but that's not others' interpretation. I'm kind of disappointed that we have two different interpretations out in the community and one that we've been presented to just now. It's clearly that there are certain individuals within the city that really don't want to see this board alive. We don't provide any type of investigations or any type of oversight to the TPD. What we do, again, I will reiterate, we review closed investigations where certain discipline were imposed, and we review them, and we just provide feedback. We're not doing an investigation. We're not bringing anybody to come here and ask them questions. We then participate in the hiring process. That's not included in the House bill. We then review complaint filing and a tracking system where we get all of our data, all of our numbers. That's not included in HB 601 bill. We then do a community survey, which is not reflected on the bill. And more importantly, we review matters of importance or interest to the community that is also not reflected on the bill. So just because there is a language barrier interpretation, I am concerned that the recommendation or track that we're looking at is to eliminate the CRB and replace it with a new Civilian Oversight Board. I recommend we continue doing the work that we've been doing. I, in fact, will make a motion to open the CRB Independent Counsel posting for 15 days, as we had initially said. And I will also make a motion to bring in the 4 candidates that had applied to come before us for a Q&A using the tool that was developed by our city attorney.
And you're saying you'll do it, or you will do it, once we finish discussing it?
I will do the motion once we finish the discussion.
Okay.
You with Dr. Collins?
Yeah, you're right, this has been extremely confusing for the CRB. The biggest thing that really concerned me from the day that I first heard it, and we brought it up here during the legislative session, the intent of HB 601, it appears more than, I don't care what we read, it was twofold, and I'm going to say it here because I've said it quite a bit in the public. One, they do not want you investigating police work, police decisions. We don't investigate. We take what we just took today, what you guys have done in internal affairs, and we bring it here and we look at it and make recommendations. That is not investigating. The second one, nobody says it, thank you for putting it in your report, but everybody keep refusing to see what I thought I saw was they would increase the sheriff's salary by $5,000. And that's what the two things was, whether it's, let me just say it like it is, whether it's the union who is actually working for them, but you've mixed it. The sheriff does not maybe have this. TPD, from my understanding, they certainly, the police chief can come up with a whatever kind of new oversight civilian board. We are not that board. We're a citizen review board. It's two separate boards. And unfortunately, I have folks that's around the state that have boards, that their boards stand intact. And they're gonna go ahead, and if the police chief wanna do his and the sheriff wanna do theirs, which it seems to me that the bill is telling them to do it, but it's not the same. So I'm gonna be inclined to support your motion, because if we continue doing what we're doing, this is one of those situations we talked about a long time ago. If the city attorneys and legal is giving us a recommendation and we want to have an outside recommendation away from that one, then we should be able to go to an outside attorney to see if theirs say the same thing. And the only reason I sent you guys this one from the speaker who was here last week, because it was sent to me and he sent it to city council and all the folks in the city. He said, make sure that your people have it. So I really think we need to read both of them. We need to understand them. And I will be inclined to support the motion so that if that's what it takes for us to get an external position on whatever it is, we don't say that we just gave up what the community and the people had without asking questions. So, you know, whatever we decide to do, but I do think that there is some ambiguity on whatever 601 was. And I see 601 is telling the sheriff, you need to get a citizen review board and get him $5,000 salary. And I don't think they even needed to do this to do that. They could have done something else.
You will, Mr. Irene Guy.
Okay, again, I'm gonna tell you, I used to be a lobbyist. I apologize for that. However, I didn't know where the ACLU document came from. Have you seen this?
Yes, the city was provided, and we reviewed that before, before.
That is an opinion. That is an opinion. Just as the city attorney's is an opinion. But the ACLU does not provide opinions to city government. They are an independent organization, and to your point, a lot of people have access to grind. And this guy has access to grind. So I trust the city. I may be alone with that, but I trust the city. I have always trusted the city attorneys. They've never done or said anything that would have disparaged what we have asked them to do. I'm a little emotional about this because I think saying that there's people in the city that don't want us, well, truthfully, there are people in the community that don't want us. And this was a statute, an ordinance passed by city council for a specific reason at the specific time we were brought together. And we have moved away from some of that. And I think sometimes we have overreached, and going to get your own attorney in a time when we don't know what's going to happen in June, I believe that is a disservice to anybody who applies for these jobs and we interview them. And that's, I'll stop at that.
You will, Dr. Collins.
I just got to say this because I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm definitely not disagreeing with the city's attorney. So I don't want, because we've had a very great relationship ever since we've been here. What I am saying is we have, and I'm being point blank, and I don't care if the legislators call me, I'm going to say it the way I feel it. We have some legislators that went up to Tallahassee with ulterior motive. And they went up there with 21 CRBs and CABs, advisory boards, across the state of Florida. Everybody didn't have them, but they had 21. They went up there with whatever their ulterior motive was. We just sit here and heard a case and ask, what took so long? Answer what took so long. The reality of what took so long is what we heard, the Bill of Rights. And what are the Bill of Rights? It's the protection. They can't just get up and just terminate people.
That's correct.
And so they too have lobbyists in Tallahassee, and they may be union related or whatever, but they had an ulterior motive when they went for HB 601, and that's why we call it the HB 601, because the Senate didn't agree with it, and the Senate was trying to change it to do something different, and they ultimately yield in to the House. Yeah, I monitored the bill all the way, and unfortunately, I'm not a lobbyist, but I've been doing it for 14 years for education, for the institution. And these things do happen, and you said it right last month. When whoever decides to interpret this, that's the way it's going to be. So right now, it's being interpreted that the Citizen Review Board will go away and that the police chief will do a new civilian oversight board. And I don't know how they're going to define oversight differently from a review. I'm just sorry. And so that's why I say I was inclined, because for whatever it is that we leave the community, it is not going against city's attorney at all. It is saying, give it your best shot. Make sure when you give up, you've given the community the best you could. Yes, there are people in the community who would love to see us gone tomorrow. And there are probably people in the city who would love to see us gone tomorrow. There are people in the community who want us to stay, and there's people with the city who want us to stay. It doesn't really matter unless we can make sure that we're doing what's right. And my role sitting here, even when I go away, my role is to protect the interests of the community, to promote the safety and the reduction of crime and things that they have given these boards credit for doing. And somebody had the audacity to ask me, oh, we didn't know that they changed things, people get terminated. Perhaps if we weren't sitting here, some of these folks may not have been terminated. And they may have been terminated, but it might have taken another 7 years. So the reality of it is, whatever we decide to do, we've had a great relationship, and we have a great relationship with TPD and with the legal at the city. But that does not mean that we don't believe them if we're saying, this is an opinionated view. ACLU, they send it to me, and that's why I send it to you guys. This is the city's opinionated view. Let's get another opinionated view.
If you will, Mr. Valdez.
And if I may add, I agree with Dr. Collins. It's shameful that it's more or less not that we don't trust the city, not that we always have had a great relationship with the city attorney, the city, the TPD, the members have come here to present, but just to say this is what we're gonna do because we're gonna create an oversight board and replace it with CRB, it's what's really the most bothered to me. Without trying, without giving its all, we're just going to give up and say June 30th, we're done, July 1st, we start a new oversight board led by the chief. So with that, if I may continue with the motion. Or does it need-
If you will, Mr. Iguodala.
I just wanted to mention that I think we need to do our diligence to survive as a board. And I think the sunshine laws are one of the things that this state got right. And I think that the sunshine laws protect the community and us by making all this stuff transparent. If we move to the chief's board, which I think he should do also, they're not subject to the sunshine laws. So the censoring and all those kinds of things will be so much easier.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Just point over, that one would be, the new board would be subject to the sunshine law. Any board that's gonna make recommendations, and if this board was specifically set up in accordance with the statute to make recommendations on policies and procedures, it would fall under sunshine law.
Okay, so the one that the chief would make?
The new board the chief would establish would be set up under sunshine law, just for clarification.
Okay, perfect.
Question.
If you will, Dr. Collins.
The comment that you just made in the last paragraph that attorney, I always say, Tara I mess up your name, so I'm not going to say it. The attorney just read that last statement.
Yes.
Can you explain that statement to me?
The last slide about
Chief
the
Burke.
chief, sure. And that's actually why I came forward, so thank you for asking that question. Yeah, the chief is looking to establish the community oversight board as allowed by the statute. He does intend, of course, on inviting this board I would like to give a brief little recap on something, which is the history of this board. You know, as you know, I've been here since the very beginning. In fact, when this initially got started at the request of a mayor, and then of course it went through city council, and you know, I was one of the individuals who traveled to Orlando. We watched their board. We came back with some recommendations. So, you know, I've been here since the beginning. I've traveled to the NACL concert with the chair, or conference with the chair, and we spoke at that conference years and years ago. But, you know, I've had the pleasure at being here with the board and working with everybody who's come and gone. It's been absolutely a great experience to work with all of you and continue to work with you. And I think that's what I wanted to come up here and say is, you know, this isn't necessarily, you know, we don't, and also to clarify something Mr. Valdez says, there's nobody sitting here that I'm aware of. And I don't think that, you know, maybe you can point to somebody, but there's nobody that I'm aware of that's running around saying, let's get rid of let's get rid of this board. This was created on behalf of the Tampa Police Department. The original name was a Citizens Review Board for the Tampa Police Department. And it was working for the police department. And as you know, you've all gone through training with the police department. It's been an open door to the police department for you guys. You know, if you guys said, hey, I want to come over tomorrow, I would show you where anything and everything you want to know. You've been through that department. You've worked with the department. You've worked with the officers. We have a great relationship with this board. I understand the frustration. The legislature passed this bill, and we're at where we're at. And so what we need to do is hopefully nothing, you know, nothing overreaching happens tonight. We need time to digest this. We need city council to look at this as they're scheduled to do in June. Remember, they're the legislative body. This board was intended to make recommendations to the police department. So I hope we don't make any motions that go too far tonight, that go, you know what I'm saying? I want us all to remain calm, right? Like, remain calm and consider this. Like, we're not looking, you know, Tamara, Ms. Pettis-Mackle and I didn't come here as advisors to, you know, get into a argument with this board. We came here to provide information. And, you know, the city attorney's office, multiple attorneys have reviewed the legislation. I've reviewed the legislation, you know, and I will tell you, I've talked to numerous outside counsel with other agencies who have boards. And they are, in fact, several of them have stopped meeting. This is one of the boards who has not stopped meeting. Several of the boards across the state have, in fact, said, well, we're going to stop meeting until this gets sorted out by our city council. We wanted you to keep meeting while we sorted this out. And, you know, we still want you to come back in May. We still want you to come back in June. We want this board to continue to meet until it's ultimately sorted out. And eventually, but right now, you know, what I mean by ultimately sorted out is how we're looking to form the next board. We're going to want some input from this board. We don't want you guys' input and all the years of experience, all the training you guys to go away. Maybe as a board, this board in this fashion may have to go away based on what we're seeing under the legislation. That's not our call. That's the legislature's call, right? And it says what it says, and I understand the ACLU's argument, but the plain language looks pretty clear to most attorneys and to other legal advisors I've spoken throughout the state. I've done my due diligence. It wasn't with an easy opinion that the city attorney had to come up here and explain to you that this board, the bill effectively is preempting the board from any sort of matters of misconduct, which is the majority of what you've done. If you go back and look at the statistics, 83% of what this board has done has been matters involving 112 matters of misconduct. Yes, you do have authority over other matters, and we're not, you know, but that's majority of what this board was set up for, was to review closed investigations and look at officers' conduct, which is oversight. No matter how you look at it, that is oversight. And oversight is exactly what National Association, NACL, defines oversight as review boards. Go on their website. They say these are the different types of review boards. That is the association that talks about review boards says oversight is a review board, what this board functions as. So we don't need to go to Nevada case law. We don't, it's, you know, and you look at the legislature and what they specifically state during their meetings. There is, even in the staff analysis, there is a line in there that one sentence just says, this bill will eliminate 6 community review boards across the state. I mean, the line's in there. We didn't make that line up. We didn't add that line. We didn't, you know, we're just providing the information, right? So the bottom line is we're at where we're at right now, which is it appears the legislature has preempted this board from anything with regards to police misconduct matters, anything with 112, which we have gone back and looked, and is about 83% of what this board has done, right? Those are the facts that we do know. Then there are some other questions about, well, is there implied preemption by the fact that the new board has been created? There's also an argument that really anything else this board might do could have been preempted by the creation of the new board, by the legislation saying that we are now creating a police chief who can appoint a board to do policies and procedures. So what is clear in the city's best interest right now is to advise you that it appears this board is going to come to an end July 1, but we still have to go before city council, right? This hasn't, you know, city council was still, there's still some discussion to be had, I'm sure. But that is the city attorney's position right now, and that's the city's position as it stands. The review of this appears that this is going to end. And the chief, though, wants to go ahead and take the opportunity to form a new one, invite all of you to participate in it and to apply. Obviously, it's limited to 6, and, you know, that's still got to be the chief's going to appoint, but he want to make it clear that he is, you know, obviously we've worked well with all the people on this board, and so we would love to have, you know, everybody invite, but have we set this up yet? No, because this is all still happening fast. So we will gonna have to set it up. The chief has still got to form the new board, figure out exactly, you know, when they're meeting, how they're meeting, but it will be in the sunshine. That much we know. But when, where, how, I mean, this is all, we're all still figuring it out. But, you know, so that's where we're at as of right now.
Well, I think tonight we have definitely displayed the passion that the board has, obviously over the months and years. The dedication is there, and I don't think anyone is ready to relinquish their duties and responsibilities and the value that we bring to the city. In my opinion, with everything being questionable, I would like to continue and conduct business as usual until we're able to find out more information. We still have responsibility in reference to presenting the annual report to City Council, which would give opportunity for us to have dialogue with City Council. So our duties and responsibilities are not at a close at this moment. So let's run through the ribbon, chest out, and let's continue to move in the fashion that we have been moving since the beginning of this creation of this board. And that's my opinion. If you will, Mr. Valdez.
I just have a question for Mr. Smith. So out of the 6 elements that we operate as our duties and responsibilities and authority, just because there is this oversight language, why would that eliminate the entire body as a whole if we're just talking about one element?
So the argument would be the express language that the legislature created saying that this board could no longer consider oversight of matters of misconduct. So if whether or not you want to agree that the term oversight is the Nevada definition or the NACL definition, but let's assume that we say that it was clear the legislative intent to eliminate matters of misconduct, and you don't consider any matters of misconduct by the police, whether that's a civilian calling and complaining, whether that's an officer late for duty, whether that's something that's a closed IA case. Those are all still matters of police misconduct. So if you remove the matters of misconduct, your question is, what about the additional matters? when, as Dr. Collins said, she was following the legislation as it went through. When the legislature made this bill, it originally started as just matters of misconduct. There was an amendment that happened that included oversight, that added specifically that word oversight in there. Then there was an amendment, in addition, there was an amendment that created the 166 section and the applicable sheriff section that created the sheriff's and police review boards, right? That was an amendment that got added. And it was an amendment that was included in the same bill, saying that we are now authorizing the police chief or the sheriff to create a board that the sheriff or police chief appoints the members and looks at policies and procedures. It did not expressly say that you could not consider anything else or that the other matters that you're talking about no longer exist, but that is potentially what's called field preemption. And the Florida Supreme Court discussed this actually in the challenge to the Miami CIP case that happened several years ago, and they talk about express implied preemption. And so the simple argument is that we believe matters of misconduct are expressly preempted, and it appears that there is what would be implied or field preemption on the remaining matters, because they've now created a board specifically for the chief of police to handle and do policies and procedures. Now, do we know that 100%? Nothing's ever 100% on that. And I can't sit here and tell you that this board absolutely couldn't consider the remaining duties that this board does. That is going to be something that City Council will need to decide, but we do know the ordinance as it stands, the current ordinance, is clearly problematic. So at a minimum, that ordinance as of July 1 appears to be on its face not valid the way it's. So the City Council is going to have to decide, do they want this board to continue to exist with the remaining duties it has, and are they comfortable with possibly a implied preemption on those duties? You know, these are things that still got to be sorted out, right? You know, and again, we're still sorting this out ourselves and trying to make the best explanation, and you know, and so I can't, you know, I can give you where I think we are at this point, but you know, I presume come time for City Council, it's not going to be me up there, it'll be somebody else who's talking to the City Council, and their opinions will be the final opinions.
Thank you.
Question.
Dr. Collins.
Help me understand the ordinance. And I understand that the city council is the elected body. I'm not asking you, should we go to the city council and ask them, because I know they use, I guess, the city attorneys. But what I am asking is, when the board was first formed and we were under whatever ordinance we were under, and the mayor actually initiated it and then went to the city council, and it was set up where the mayor will appoint X number, the city council would appoint X number. It may have been that the mayor was appointing one more. Then, when we went before the city council for the second, for the modification, when we got to where we are today, what is the difference between those two ordinances? Are they the same, or are they different?
Are you saying between
The initial one, when the CRB was initially started, and I don't know how many years ago it was, but
and the amended one? Are you talking about, what is the difference between the original ordinance and the one that later got modified? I think they had added additional provisions, as you're aware, that the added the right, the job duties for you guys to do some interviews. The NAACP position got added. There are some additional things, I guess, included within the ordinance. Those are the two I remember. There was another.
Was that ordinance still the same ordinance that was the original ordinance?
It was a strike and repeal. So when they passed the new one that had these additional provisions. They completely struck the old ordinance and they replaced it with an entirely new ordinance. Of course, a lot of the language was still the same, but it was a complete strike of the old ordinance and replaced with this new ordinance that we're currently under.
Okay. Because the first one was an ordinance that was initiated by the mayor with city council for TPD.
Yeah,
The second one
the mayor
is still
passed
with,
executive order.
okay, right. So is the second ordinance with just the city council for TPD?
So the mayor passed the executive order, and then very soon thereafter, city council passed a ordinance that either mirrored the executive order or the executive order may have been slightly amended, so they matched. So both the executive order and the original ordinance were hand in hand
Working together in order to
language,
create.
right? So there was no disagreement between the two of them, and they both moved forward. At some point, city council did repeal the ordinance and replaced it with the ordinance we're at
So they
today.
did fully repeal the first one and then implemented the second one.
Correct.
So it is in the hands of city council, so that's what we should be doing. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Schmidt. If you will,
May I continue with the motion, Mr. Chair?
if you will.
I make a motion to open the CRB Independent Council posting for 15 days, so that way we can attract more candidates as it relates to the Hillsborough County area, Tampa Bay area, as we had initially proposed 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
Second.
Any further discussion in reference to the motion on the floor? I would just add, with the commentary that we received tonight, and obviously we will continue with the vote, but it's in my opinion, to not involve or not to invite additional applicants at this stage of this particular program. I think it would be doing them a misfortune, being able that we aren't able to forecast our particular future, and to bring in applicants at this stage of the program will be doing them as a misfortune and be doing a misfortune to the city.
And, Mr. Chairman, I agree with you.
Thank you, sir. We'll now continue with the vote. All those in favor in reference to the motion on the floor, please show by raising a hand. All those opposed? That motion fails. Thank you.
Can I have a second motion, Mr. Chair?
Please continue with your second motion.
Second motion is to bring the 4 candidates that we currently have, Lindsay, Quick, Polzak, and Barak, to the next scheduled meeting for a Q&A session on May 28th. And during that session, we will use the tool that was created by our city attorney to score them and make a proper decision, if any, moving forward into hiring an independent counsel.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor in reference to bringing the 4 applicants to a Q&A session upon the May 28th meeting.
That is our next scheduled meeting.
Yes, May 28th meeting for a Q&A section in reference to continuing to pursue independent legal advisory.
And just for the board to know, the tool that was provided to us has the questions, and we'll score them based on their answers. I would further propose, in times of time being, we don't need to necessarily review a case that month. We can just focus on the Q&A session and go from there.
Any other statements or questions, any further discussion in reference to the motion that's on the floor?
Mr. Chair.
If you will, Reverend Banks.
Yes. Based on all of the commentary that we've heard tonight, it seems to me that the time and energy that we have left should be spent on trying to influence the future. The chief obviously feels he has the authority based on the recommendation from their legal counsel to proceed with establishing a new board. It is my understanding that the city council is the legislative body for the city of Tampa, and they will have the final decision as to whether they will fight this issue with the state. So we need to attempt to influence the city council and influence the chief so that we can have the most impact, as opposed to spending time and energy on something that appears to be a moot point at this time.
Thank you, Reverend Banks. Anyone else want to add commentary? We'll now continue with the vote. Those are all in favor, in reference to the motion that's on the floor, please show by raise of hand. All those opposed, please show by raise of hand. That motion fails. We'll now continue with the agenda, if you will. Dr. Collins.
Respecting all of the board members and their concerns, just a comment that Reverend Banks just made. I don't want to make a motion first, but I want to ask a question. Are we in a position where we should put together what our concerns are and submit them to the city council prior to submitting our annual report? That's a question from the board.
If you will, Ms. Kamaria Pettis-Michael.
Just for clarification, all the board members it's going to be an open, you're able to go on June 6th to speak regarding that item, because you're also going to be there, well, the chair will also be there to discuss the annual report. So if it's your desire to express your frustration with this legislation or ask questions, you could just appear in front of city council regarding that.
True, but by that time, we're sitting now in April. We'll go through the remainder of this month, about 10 days if that's what we have left or less or whatever. And we have the whole month of May and then June. And so everyone else will be expressing their concerns. What I'm asking the board is if we are okay and we're fine with the decisions the way they're going, we do nothing, or we send a letter of interest to the city council indicating to them how we feel about the Citizen Review Board. If we feel, I'm probably the last one should be saying something because I'm gone anyway. I won't say it loud. But I just think that to sit silent and not express, yes, we've expressed ourselves here tonight, and there's no question. And I personally want to make sure that every opportunity was given for us to express it. So I feel comfortable with that. But do we not say anything to City Council? Do we just wait till we get there in June and everyone else is giving their comments? And if that's what this board preference, that's why I didn't make a motion. I asked a question.
In my opinion, actions speak louder than words. And by continuing our duties and responsibilities, and I believe that shows the best reflection of action. And to implement any type of drafted letter, it's going to consist of numerous additional meetings. We aren't going to be able to create such a letter in tonight's meeting, and the next opportunity will be in May. And as far as these discussions been going, I'm not sure we'll be able to create a letter of such on that particular day. So I think the very next opportunity to share any opinion or question or statement would be the date that we have is June 6th, when we have the opportunity to present their presentation to City Council. That's my opinion. If you will, Dr. Collins. Excuse me, not Dr. Collins.
That's okay, we look just alike.
Ms. Irene Guy.
To Dr. Collins' point, we all have an opinion. I agree with you. I don't know that we could put a letter together and all agree on our opinions, because we are separate individuals. We were appointed to this board, as separate individuals. You have access to your city council members as a citizen, and you're a member of the Citizens Review Board. You can tell them, I'm a member of all of you have access to the same people. You can talk to them, you can send them letters, you can have your friends send them letters. Having a letter come from this board, I think we would be here for the next 3 weeks, and when we walked out of here, we still wouldn't have a letter. So we all have opinions, and we're entitled to those opinions, and tell your city council member how you feel. It is an opinion that you hold, that's you. And I'm gonna do it. I send letters to them all the time. They all know me because I send them letters, but I also give them facts, and I think stick with the facts. They're going to have the opinion of the law from the attorneys, and you can express your opinion, and you should. And I said I was going to shut up about 45 minutes ago, and it didn't work. Ask my husband, it didn't work at home either.
Thank you, Ms. Guy.
I just want to make sure I put something on the floor. And thank you for that.
With that, one last statement and comment in reference to this particular item of the agenda, then we're gonna move forward. If you will, Mr. Valdez.
Sure. I just wanted to let you all know I appreciate everyone's dialogue and opinions and whatnot. I just really don't want nobody to mistake in what I had said about my frustration or whatnot about comments that are misinterpreted. So I just want to put that on the record, just, to be bluntly transparent. But again, I appreciate the work that this board has been doing. I appreciate what we'll be doing for the next 2 months, and hopefully we can continue as a body moving forward come July 1st. But time will tell, and we will have to adjust as needed. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. We'll now continue with the agenda in reference to, we're still on item 10, in reference to number 2, community survey. Is there any discussion in reference to the community survey? If you will, Dr. Collins.
I know we are all continuing to work, and at the rate it's going now, I think the community survey, because the work that goes into that and getting it out into the community, et cetera, that one we should put it on hold until after we figure out what's going to happen. So I would just keep that one where it is, items to be continued. That would be my recommendation.
Any other further comment or commentary or questions in reference to item 10, number 2, in reference to community survey? The item will be continued. We'll now continue with the agenda under announcements and new business. New business is our same business, as we will meet next month, May 28th, the 4th Tuesday of the month, at 6 o'clock, here at Old City Hall, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, 33602. For any of board members that are unable to attend next month's meeting, please give notification at least 48 hours in advance so we can ensure a voting forum. We'll now continue with the agenda in reference to item 11. Before I adjourn this meeting, I would like to give any of our board members the opportunity to add any final comments or statements at this time. Hearing none, thank you. Please. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Cook.
You know I had to say something. I've been on this board for a short time. I've gone to so many oral board interviews, and the discussions that we've had in the short time I've been here, and it's a disgrace that this board is not continuing, man. I mean, when I go to those oral board interviews, we get a 20% stake in who gets hired by the police department. That is huge. Otherwise, it's just police hiring police. We have to be involved in these things, or else we're going to have a big problem coming forward. And when that problem happens, who's going to represent the people? But the people, right? We need citizens like us leaders in the neighborhood to come onto this board and review things. I mean, even if it's past cases, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, look what we did today. This case is, what, 2 years old? It's still vital information that we're giving out. And it's just very disappointing to me that, you know, the mayor appointed me to this board and it's over already. It's just, it's terrible. And when we got this legal speak here, in the short presentation, at the end of it, that's why I asked the question, is this thing over or not? And it's a terrible, it's just a terrible disgrace that, you know, this thing could be ending, this board. And we all take our voluntary time and we all value our time and we come here and we make these decisions, we make these recommendations, and just like that, it's no more. So I just wanted to say that. I don't know if I was making a point or what. I just felt that inside to say what I wanted to say, and I'm sure everybody here feels the same way as I do. So I wasn't like specifically making a point. I just wanted to say what I felt. Okay.
And just to add, the service will continue. So we've been in this place before where the board's been restructured. Again, whatever board that the chief create, we will adjust at that time. But what's important here is that the service to the community has been customized to fit today's norm. So the service will still be present, and it should be updated or customized to today's, and it still will provide that particular service to the community. Whether we're able to participate or not, again, we all still have voices. We're all going to still be stand-up individuals in our community. We'll still be leaders in our community and things of that nature. So no one knows what the future holds. But again, as we move forward, this particular service is not over. It will still be, the new Chiefs Board will still be a vital element for the community as well. So whether I'm a part of it or not, I wish it well. I will support it as well, and encourage to continue to blossom. So it's not necessarily over. Maybe we're just transitioning. Any other statements or comments?
I'm gonna go ahead and make one.
If you will,
Like I
Dr.
haven't
Collins.
made enough. I'm going to assume that the board will be continuing as the Citizen Review Board, and we'll be blessed in this city to have both a sheriff and a police oversight board. I'm gonna stay real positive. I'm gonna also thank the mayors who actually implement and supported this process and encourage that they continue. I'm gonna also thank the chief because TPD have been very, very supportive. But I'm gonna also say before the last thing I say, I'm gonna say to the city council, they went through quite a bit to change the ordinance and get more things involved because they saw value. And I would ask them whether we individually go to city council, since we're not going to be going collectively together as one, that they actually advocate to maintain the board if it can be maintained, and to make sure that they take a look at the HB 601, the great bill. And then I want to say last too, the number of people in the community who actually watched this and called in and say, thank you guys for doing that, and we didn't understand this, and many of the educational sessions that the staff have brought before us that have benefited people in the community, whatever it is, that replace CRB, if it is replaced, make sure that it is a service to the community, is transparent, and that we make sure that if the statistics says that there have been a reduction in crime and have attributed to these 21 CRBs and CABs we have around the state of Florida, let's hope that we end up with 67 after HB 601 has come in, and that we're still providing a service. One thing we don't want is what caused them to, cops and the Virginia Police Group, to start saying this is what we needed.
Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned.